Hello, my name is Joshua Schlegel, and this is my spoiler discussion of Last Argument of Kings by Joe Abercrombie, the third book in the First Law trilogy. So I'm just going to get right into it. So let's see. So we know that the crew returns from their expedition. The seed was not found. Logen goes to the north to wrap up loose ends with Bethid and fight alongside the Union, where Collem West and the rest of the Northmen are as well. The rest of the crew return to Adua. Glokta is tasked with blackmailing and pulling off shenanigans to get votes for Archlector Sult, since both heirs to the throne are now deceased. So that's where we're at. Jezal Dan Luthar. Oh, Jezal. So Jezal returns a humbled man. He appreciates life more than ever and respecting others much more than he used to. He visits Ardi and their love comes to fruition, physically and emotionally. He had already planned to marry her. He was already thinking this. He's already told her that he loves her and things like this, right? And Glokta threatens him and just adds pressure to that. I love how Jezal, you see him trying to put his foot down more, right? And even Glokta notices right away, like, this is a different guy. This is not the Jezal that left. So, you know, and the whole scar on his face and him growing the beard over it and everything, even his appearance, right, is completely different. So he's a changed guy, which I can definitely appreciate. The whole peasant uprising happens, which we learn is staged. It was pretty underwhelming, to be honest. I mean, I didn't know how that was going to go down, right? I mean, this is before we know, like, Bayaz's hand and everything. And so there's this peasant uprising, and he goes, you know, Bayaz tags along with him. And even before that, you saw how Jezal wanted to help a woman that was kind of being abused by guards when they got back to Adua. You saw how Bayaz made a scene of that and wanted everyone to notice, like, Jezal, like, the kind, or Jezal the, I don't know, like, just, he made it a big deal. And I did think that was weird. It definitely makes sense now, but this whole peasant uprising was easily, like, negotiated. And it's funny because the terms that Jezal came with from the closed council to strike a bargain with the guy who was in charge of this uprising, I think they called him the Tanner, this dude is like, I accept, you know, no quarrel, no nothing. And the guy next to him who's in the tent with him is like, dude, are you crazy? Like, these are worse terms than they presented us with the first time. Like, why? Like, what's going on? You promised this and that, like, da-da-da-da. And he's like, it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. So it was underwhelming, to say the least. And even Jezal was shocked by it. It's like, okay. And he was getting all this credit for it as well. It definitely plays a huge part in Jezal becoming the king. And this moment, you know, when I look for my favorite scenes in this book, there's plenty of scenes that pop off in this book. I feel like Jezal becoming king is probably my favorite. It gave me goosebumps. And I think it was just because I was on the lookout for why Jezal, right? Why did Bayaz choose Jezal? Why is Jezal on this journey with them? The whole reason, you know, he chose Logen was because Logen can talk to spirits. Pharaoh's like part demon. She can hold the seed. Jezal, what is Jezal doing? Like, besides being a coward and whining about everything. So come, you know, and they announce it as him being a bastard son of the king. So, you know, who better than to choose Jezal Dan Luthar to make him the king and whatnot. And it's funny because all of Glokta's efforts just get shot with this. And you see Ferro Maljinn in the top level of the closed council building, like, just laughing her ass off. And and Glokta is like, you gotta be joking. Like, there's no way. And it happened. So Jezal becomes the king. They crown Jezal. And we know how Jezal is. So I think that just makes it that much better. And right away you get the sense, like, he has no idea what he's doing. No idea. And they painted the whole peasant uprising thing, like, Bayaz, right? I say they. Bayaz painted the whole peasant uprising and Jezal putting that to rest such a huge accomplishment. But we know, and Jezal knows, like, this wasn't, like, that was nothing. Like, that was nothing. He can't marry Ardi now, and you kind of feel bad for Ardi at this point, right? I always felt bad for her, especially, you know, we can go back to book 1 and talk about, you know, what West did and whatnot, but even, like, through all of that, it's been clear where her kind of, I guess, social status is, and that's why, you know, she's just a heavy drinker. You just feel kind of bad for her, but Jezal's like that light for her. or has been. And now it's like that's gone. He has this meeting with her in the garden, which leading up to that, I love that we see that Gorst, who is the guy he defeated in the contest where Bayaz cheated to help him win that contest. But Gorst is like becomes like one of his right-hand guardsmen. And when Gorst is like, Your Majesty, and Jezal's like, no, like, don't call me that, please, like, not you, like, just call me Jezal. Just call me Jezal. He says the same thing to Artie. So you can tell he feels the weight of the crown, and I don't think he's comfortable with it at all. So in the north, Marshal Burr winds up dying, which at that time, I suspected foul play. I was already wondering if someone's, like, poisoning him, right? Because he was, like, throwing up crazy. And he was always, like, having, like, indigestion or whatever, or burping, or belching. So I wondered, like, what's up with that, you know, like, just who knew? But he winds up croaking. They're faced with a situation where they already sent the Northmen to this fort or whatever to try to draw out Bethid so they can, like, come in behind and have victory. And, well, when Burr dies and this whole plan and the fighting is still going on, even before he died, like, while he was sick, like, West is trying to take command and just not let anyone find out of his condition. But when he finally dies, you have General Croy and General Polder, who are just at each other's throats constantly. They rival each other big time, and they're always trying to one-up each other to the point of annoyance. And West, being who he is with, you know, again, we look at social status, it's like he'll never be able to rise to Lord Marshal. It's kind of like a miracle to see where he's at now, which he got through just his own merit, his own, you know, intelligence, his hard work, his being shown that he's capable of in battle and war. And it turns out that he's like an excellent commander. He's a great commander, but he's just not at the level of class where they would consider him to be the replacement for Lord Marshal Burr. Instead, it has to be Croy or Polder. And West is like, well, look, like, his orders were clear. I think we need to, you know, keep our word to the Northmen. We need to, you know, go or whatever. And, you know, Croy and Polder aren't having it. And it's already like the stakes get raised here because West is like, dude, it's going to take days to get a new appointed Lord Marshal Burr. We have to send a message to Adua about what happened, and then they have to decide on who's going to take the new command and then send it back. And it's just like, you know, just a predicament that they find themselves in. Well, when the time comes and they're in the closed council, this is where you see Jezal make, I think, his first big decision as king, which I love to see. It gained respect for me, but it was also hilarious because he's like getting drunk and just he's drinking wine and they're discussing it, right? It winds up being brought up in conversation. Jezal clearly sees that he's just kind of there wearing the crown to watch these other guys bicker and make decisions amongst themselves. But Bayaz definitely lets him know, like, you are the king, though. Like, don't let these guys, you know, tell you what to do. Don't let these guys, you know, you can fire them if you want to. You can get them out of here if you want to. It's up to you. Like, you are the king. And so in this moment, Jezal stands up and he's like, Lord Marshal West, right? He promotes Collem West to Lord Marshal, and I definitely saw this coming. The moment they brought it up, it just clicked in my mind, right? Jezal and West are friends. It's gonna be West. And I was so excited. So he does that. He also throws the cup of wine. Like, he makes a huge scene out of it. And Bayaz is like impressed, but it's funny how Bayaz is okay with him feeling this way until, you know, Bayaz wants to be able to tell him what to do and guide him, though, right? Which he does gracefully, at first anyway. So that scene is definitely one of my two favorite moments for him as the king. That one is definitely my favorite because it's, you know, it's just the first sign of him kind of, I guess, becoming his own man. He winds up getting married to Therese, who is this very beautiful woman from Styria. We first saw her in book 1, and she was promised to Ladisla, I believe, which we know how Ladisla was. She winds up being a very cruel and mean wife. Yeah, you know, but she definitely is talented in portraying the whole image of royalty, as well as dancing. And Styria, when it comes to Styria and like her father and where they're from and stuff. I wish we got a bit more, I wish we got that a bit more fleshed out. You know, I think Casca's from there as well. I really wanted to see more of Styria, or just the south in general too. Like, we get so much of the north, but not so much of that. But I kept wondering if she was like gonna wind up being a traitor, or wind up being like, what's her deal, right? Because it felt like there was something with her. But as soon as he's like trying to, I guess, what's the word? Consolate the marriage, or I think it's consolate the marriage. Basically, you know, sleep with her for the first time. She just like is not having it at all, like to the point of violence. She even says, you know, yeah, like Ladisla was, you know, trash, but at least he wasn't a bastard, like some filth, like bastard son of a whore. Like, it's just like, wow. So she was completely different and very graceful before that point. So I found that interesting. So at the wedding, you see Artie and Glokta go together, which I love their dialogue together. Artie and Glokta, they're always so in sync with one another. You can see their compatibility through their dialogue for sure. Artie did weep. She said that she thought she'd be the one to do Jezal dirty or leave him. Yeah, you know, that didn't happen. So we get to the point where the Gurkish invades Adua. So Jezal finally makes a stand up to his wife at this point, to Therese. Therese is like on the verge of leaving. I don't agree with how Jezal does it, but he basically backhands her and like sits her down. He's like, you're not going anywhere. I mean, he did try to tell her before it came to that, but you know, just with her being her, and she was always bullying him and stuff. He does what he does to sit her down and make sure she knows, like, you're not going anywhere. Like, I'm not allowing the queen of Adua to leave when its people are fighting, like, for its survival. Like, you know how bad that would look, and the morale would get lowered to, you know, even lower than what it is now. So I understand why Jezal was refusing to let her leave. And even through all the spite that she gave Jezal never really disrespected her or treated her any kind of way until this moment. I don't know if that excuses the slapping or the backhand, but I think it definitely, just another moment that I can appreciate Jezal standing up to her at least, right? Because before it was just him being bullied by her the entire time, at least through my eyes. So when Jezal gives his speech to the people, you know, because it's like basically militia at this point that has to defend Adua. All of their army is in the north, dealing with the north. Jezal gives his speech, and it's so funny because it's like very, it starts off strong, then it goes downhill, and then he has to bring it back up again. And you can just see like it's his first time kind of just getting used to this whole king position, and it's hilarious. But he does great there. He winds up doing good, and then that's probably another one of my favorite moments. I also think him being in the closed council, and they're talking about, you know, we need to move further away from the fighting. We need to go as far away from it as possible to keep the king safe. And Jezal's like, no. Like, we're staying right here. We're going to hold this down and defend it. You know, I'm not going to leave my people. Like, these are all just big transformations of Jezal, right? Huge from who he was in the first book. I'm loving seeing this, because I already had a feeling we would see kind of Jezal turn a new leaf. There's still that background of like fear or just something in him that feels on the weaker side, but you see the development. I mean, I think like, what would I do like in that position, right? He's just kind of thrusted upon being king all of a sudden, or you know, the crown's like thrusted upon him and he didn't want it. It feels heavy, and he's just trying to make the best of it. He's trying to change for the better. So watching all of this and his struggle through it as well has been such a joy. So entertaining and just great to see as well. There's even a scene where he charges in to defend the wall himself. He charges into harm's way because he sees that the Gurkish are they dug a way through the wall of Arnault, I believe it's called. And Jezal notices that, and he's like, you know, all men with me now, and he charges in. He sees the Gurkish coming like in real time, and they stop them. So heroic moment for him, while Bayaz and everyone else is like, you know, not a good decision. Like, why would you put yourself in harm's way? Like, you're the king, yada yada. So I'll pretty much from here just go to like hit the end of his arc in a way. I'll sum up everything when we get to Bayaz, but you know, I felt really bad for Jezal with how everything ended. I think he definitely tried his best, and you can see it through all these moments I'm giving. I think you can see him attempting to be a better man and be a good king, even though he has no idea what he's doing. When it comes to who he was in book 1, complete 360. He showed more bravery, thrown into a position he didn't ask for. He went to the hospital right after everything was said and done, and greeted each man and was there for every man after the war. It just shows how far he's come. He fell victim to Bayaz just like mostly everyone else did in this book, in my opinion. So I like Jezal. You can arguably say he's my favorite character in this book, but I don't know. It's hard when I ask myself. The first 2 books I can clearly say who's my favorites, but this one it's tough because I like them all. Well, I don't like them all, but as far as our main POVs, right, Jezal, Glokta, Logen, I like them all. It ends with him working on having children with Therese, which we find out why she was the way she was, which definitely made me feel bad for her at that point. But it's like she could have went about that a whole different way. She didn't have to be, a complete, But I love this conversation with Glokta as well. And again, just showing that he still has this side of him that he wants to be good, right? And he's trying. And he's speaking to Glokta about, like, can we do more for the wounded in Adua? Can we build another hospital, maybe to hold more people in it, or to cater more, just to do better things for the people, right? And Glokta is like, I don't think the man in charge would like that, but over time we can probably do things, just not right now. Little by little, I can see us being able to make it happen, Your Majesty, And I love that little promise that Glokta gives him, or a little hope. And Jezal's like, yes, of course. Like, bittersweet ending for Jezal. Well, almost for everyone, but for sure for Jezal. I really felt bad for him. I liked how he was redeeming himself up until he couldn't, but I don't see it as his fault either. So, speaking of Sandan Glokta, I'll just start with him, like, torturing Brother Longfoot. It's Brother Longfoot. Brother Longfoot didn't get tortured too bad. He was getting his foot, I think, kind of hammered on, or tapped on by a hammer, and his big toe. But it's just hilarious because it's Brother Longfoot. Like, it was very interesting because I'm like, what are you going to get out of Brother Longfoot? And the whole point he's doing this is because Salt is still telling Glokta, like, you need to find out about Bayaz. Like, you need to find out what they want, what they're doing. Like, I need this information. It's like, that's his number one thing he wants. So Glokta's torturing Brother Longfoot, not as graphic as he's tortured others. Brother Longfoot tells him that Mammon and Khalul have, he was chosen to be a spy, essentially, to spy on Bayaz when he went on the journey as a navigator. They knew that one of them would be hired as a navigator. Yeah, and when Brother Longfoot got back, he told Mammon everything. So I found that very interesting. And I try to keep that in the back of my mind throughout this entire book, because you get that information early. And the thing with this book, too, is, you got the conflict going on in the north, and you got the conflict going on in the south. So it's like Adua's under pressure. You got war in the north by Bethid wanting to take England, and then you got war in the south of Gurkish wanting to invade, and the whole thing with Khalul versus Bayaz. So that's all going down. So just war from 2 different fronts on Adua. But it's like there's also something going on within Adua, because that's where Glokta's POV comes in. He's like doing all these investigations, and we find out that, who killed the second prince, who killed, who's so there's an eater there in Adua, right? And we saw it in the first book as well, the whole incident with the side of the wall where Logen thought he saw, like, his ex-wife or whatever. Like, so we know there's an eater in Adua. We know there's just stuff going on behind the scenes. When he goes to arrest that one guy, he's like, look to the banks. You want to find corruption, look to the banks, look to the closed council. So I keep this in the back of my mind. Like, there's still stuff going on in Adua, though, from within, and that's where Glokta is the one who's going to be able to figure all this out. I'm, like, super intrigued, and, like, but this is stuff that I feel like it's kind of underneath in the background, because the big conflicts that are easy to just take front and center are the war in the north and the war in the south. You got Glokta versus Hoth. I think his name is Hoth. It might not be Hoth. I don't remember what his name was. The guy who essentially I think was working under Morovia, because Morovia and Salt are rivals, and Glokta is Salt's man and whoever Morovia's man was. And they're going against each other for the votes, right, to figure out who's going to be king. I love that scene where he gets invited to, that dude invites Glokta to the slaughterhouse to meet for conversation, to possibly strike a deal, work together, whatever they're going to do. And the fact that it's a slaughterhouse, you know, Glokta shows up and they start talking, and it's clear that that dude plans to have Glokta killed, and henchmen come out or whatever. And then you see those henchmen quickly die because Glokta's henchmen are there with him. He got the beloved Frost and Sevrard with him to back up Glokta, and so Glokta was a step ahead. Glokta's always a step ahead, and that's part of why I love him. I have a thing for a character, like, even though he's vile and he does these horrible things, it's like you kind of root for him, you know. It's crazy how that works depending on the POV and just if you wind up liking the character in general. But I love that about him. Anytime he's backed into a corner, he always finds a way out of that corner. He always flexes in a different way. So you got Vitari and Superior Goyle making moves in the university. They like quickly halted Glokta's questioning about the seed and the other side, and trying to investigate further into what Bayaz is doing and what's going on there. You know, they're like rummaging around in the university, like, what are they doing? Like, what was that about? You know, and Vitari's like, you know, you saved my life from Dagoska. Like, this is me saving yours now. Leave this stuff alone. Like, leave now. Get out of here. You know, very interesting. And then that big Northman practical who Bayaz like exploded because he lost his temper in book 1 is like walking around in Frankenstein mode in there. I was like, whoa, you know, what is going on in the university for real? There's just too much going on. So Artie and Glokta at the wedding, so we spoke about that. Glokta being told by Mothis and the bank. So Mothis is like a representative of Valence and Balk, which is the bank. And they gave Glokta all this money back in Dagoska, which helped him hold down Dagoska up until it fell. And which he did a great job at doing there. He still has all this money, right? It's a fortune, so Glokta's still like a rich man. But this money came from the bank. And it's basically like, whatever favors we need from you, we'll let you know when the time comes, type of thing. Well, now the time has come. And basically what they start to tell him is, we don't like you investigating into Bayaz, into the university, or, you know, the seed, right? And also not the Jezal lineage. We don't like you investigating into Jezal's parents either, which I found interesting. So, and it's just like against what Salt wants Glokta to do. So you get Glokta put into a sticky situation. He consults Artie about this, but he uses an analogy of like two lovers, and Artie's her answer was like, Glokta, like, you know, I think we lost the we lost the whole point of like what I was asking. Like, it was so funny. But then Artie hits him with, how about this? What I would actually do is find a third suitor. You know, how do you like that? And so Glokta thinks about it. He's like, oh, okay, a third suitor, huh? So he goes to Morovia, tells him everything, which is super risky for Glokta. But I guess it's like, either way, he's pretty much screwed, either by the bank or by Salt. So the risk was worth it, I guess. Like, what could it do that wasn't already going to happen to him, is how he saw it. So he does tell Morovia, but Morovia wants, you know, he wants proof, he wants evidence, a signed confession from Salt, which Glokta's great at getting, but that just, oh wow. And Gurkish have invaded already at this point, and war is going on within Audua, and Glokta's still trying to do all this stuff, right? And he does mention this. He's like, man, even when there's war going on, like, we're still worried about, like, all this stuff, right? Trying to figure out, you know, what's going on with Archlector and Salt, and, you know, the banks are holding this over my head, even through war. And he has Artie with him for safety. He hired Koska with other mercenaries that, you know, they're like in disguised as practicals, but it's funny how they look like a band of misfits. And Koska's a great character. I love Koska. So they're all traveling with each other. They're in Glokta's mansion, right? His little torture mansion or whatever. and you get a chapter called Questions. There's a chapter called Questions in all 3 books, and anytime you get that chapter, I've noticed that you're gonna get like some progression for sure, right? And these are like the best chapters usually, in my opinion, with Glokta. And so I knew something was about to go down. What I didn't know is, oh my gosh. Okay, so we know that there was a traitor amongst Glokta. We knew someone was feeding Archlector Salt information on him. So it was like, who could it be? Because how does Salt know all this stuff? And there was a scene I remember where Glokta was in the middle of interrogating somebody. I feel like it was Brother Longfoot. It could have been someone else. But Salt comes in, all intimidating like and whatnot. And this scene shows you that he no longer trusts Glokta, because he's like questioning Glokta. He's like, whatever happened to Eider in Dagoska? Why wasn't I told? There's just a lot that Lector Salt started to realize and like bring up, and Glokta's like, how would he know? He tells, but the moment he walks in with practicals on Glokta, he tells everyone else to leave and get out, including Frost. And Frost picks up the prisoner, whoever it is they're interrogating, and he looks back over his shoulder before he leaves. So I noticed that, and I kept that in the back of my mind. So I'm already thinking like, I want to jump to Servard as a traitor. Like, that's who my mind instantly wants to jump to. And I think it's just because we saw Ferro get to Servard and get information on Glokta, where to find him, this and that. So it kind of sets up like, well, it had to be Servard. And plus, Frost talked like this. So it's like, it can be Frost. So, but Frost looked back as he's leaving. So I'm already like in my mind like, Servard's too obvious. It has to be Frost. But, it turns out, at least initially, it's Servard. They trap him, because Servard starts to run when Glokta brings it up. So very suspicious like. He wakes up and he's tied up and everything, and he confesses while like his fingers are literally like halfway chopped off. And the banks got to him. So the banks got to Servard and got information. But Glokta's still like, well, okay, so you told the banks everything, like what about Salt? He's like, I didn't tell Salt nothing. And then he looks at Frost. And Frost basically goes around and snaps Servard's neck before Servard can speak anymore. I felt so bad for Servard at this point, because he really didn't deserve to die. I don't think he kind of was in a situation where he had no choice to rat on Glokta. And both times, if he wanted to live, right, he had Ferro, which could have killed him. And then you had the banks, which could have definitely, got rid of him as well. So, but with Frost, it was like, and Glokta's like, why? Why would you betray me? And he just shrugs his shoulders, bro. We get no closure on that, or no reason to why Frost chose to do that. And it's just, we saw them be Glokta's right-hand men, and them as a crew for so long, and then all of a sudden it's come to this. And the coolest moment out of the whole thing, besides, oh my god, like, so Artie comes in and like stabs Frost in the back and just kind of frozen it, and they all kind of stop and look at each other with hesitation. And then it's just like, oh, Frost punches Artie in the face and knocks her against the wall. I was just like, oh. Anyways, the coolest part though is Glokta raising his cane and like clicking a button on it, and it was like it's been designed the exact way he wanted it to be, and like it turns into like a weapon, and he's like jab jab Glokta, jab jab, and he winds up jabbing and stabbing Frost to death, right, on his one good foot. And just, man, what a scene, so jaw-dropping, so emotional. It was great. So, wow. So at this point, Gurkish breaches into Middle Way, which means they're basically in the city now. They've broken in, like they're getting ready to conquer everything. And so Glokta lets out Brother Longfoot to help them navigate through the sewers so they can travel to the Agrion underground, because Glokta's like, we got to get to the Agrion, And in my mind, I'm like, what is he going to do? I'm pretty sure he's like gunning it for Archlector Salt, right? But I still didn't know for sure like what his plans were because he didn't say. But he just said like we have to get to the Agrion immediately. So he winds up letting Longfoot go free. That was the whole deal. And I found interesting that Brother Longfoot didn't leave with them or go above ground with them. He actually went back down into the sewers, turned the corner, and was gone. So, and that's the last we saw of Brother Longfoot. I wonder if we'll see him in the future. I don't know. I liked Brother Longfoot because he was just funny. He was a funny character when he would show up, just annoying the others. Glokta winds up getting Superior Goyle. He winds up getting a confession out of Superior Goyle. We find out that like all this demon stuff and research is going on at the university, and it's happening through the command of Archlector Sult. And Glokta's like, really? Like Sult? Like I did not take him for a guy to even believe in stuff like that. Whatever kind of stuff's going on there has to be stopped. He had walked in on Morovia, and Morovia was dead. Morovia was like, his body splattered into places but frozen. It was like all icy in his office and whatnot. So yeah, Morovia was gone. But he winds up seeing Morovia with Jezal. So interesting. And I already knew who it was because they already, Abercrombie planted the seed of Sulphur's eye color. So once they said like one eye was green and one eye was blue or something like that, I knew who it was. But what I didn't know was like why. But yeah, that was interesting. When he finally storms in on Archlector Sult, and they're just watching like them like, I don't know, they're like chanting, some ritual stuff going on. I'm thinking like Cthulhu-esque. Like they're just standing in a circle and summoning whatever. Who knows? And Salt's like, no, like stop or whatever. And just it gets to the point where Koska's like, allow me. And he just like throws a knife at the chanter's face and just ends it right there. And they're all looking around like, what's going to happen, right? And nothing happens. And they wind up grabbing Salt, and that was a funny moment as well. And I was interested to see like, are demons going to come out? Like what's going to happen from this? Like some Diablo type stuff? I don't know. But nothing happened. It was funny. So we'll jump to Glokta, winds up becoming Archlector after the war's over. He winds up being put in charge as like kind of a parent figure to Jezal, like watch over the king, you guide the king. You basically tell him what to do, don't let him make stupid decisions. He winds up marrying Artie, which is very interesting. But he proposed to her to save her life, because in the closed council they're basically telling him like, we need to get rid of her. She's a problem for Jezal, and we need an heir, because they find out she's pregnant, and we're not gonna let them find out that his first, there's a bastard son or whatever. So anyways, they're like, we got to get rid of her somehow. She's gonna be a problem. She's a liability. And Glokta's like, all right, understood. Well, he proposes to her to keep her safe, and I just thought that was like the most heartfelt thing, and the way he said it too. But surprisingly, she said yes. She does marry him, and not only does she marry him, she winds up becoming like a keeper of a woman. She winds up taking care of him. He winds up waking up soiling himself, and come to find out that she like told his assistant that he can have the mornings off because she'll handle it from here on out. Just very heartwarming to see that she's willing to do that for Glokta, and her reconciling with her brother as well, and forgiving him. And yeah, I feel like the most heartwarming, any kind of bow wrapping, anything you get in this story is going to be with Artie West and how she turned out, her character and her being there for Glokta and everything. That's probably the most brightest ray of sunshine, honestly, through all these characters. We'll end it with Pike. Pike, who was Commander West's, Lord Marshal West's right-hand man, that, was a prisoner that West wound up rescuing and kind of just allowing him to be a part of the army. Him becoming West's right-hand loyal man. Well, it turns out that's Ruse. That's Salem Ruse from book 1 that Glokta was torturing and condemned and sent to prison. He winds up coming out and revealing his identity to take revenge on Glokta. And you see how Glokta gets out of that. It's crazy. But the thing is what I loved about this scene the most, and we've seen that Glokta do this and multiple times. He's always like prepared to die. He's always like, you know what, I'm ready. If he's not thinking it to himself, he's straight up told Ruse like, do it. Like showing him his neck, like, go ahead and cut me. Like, I'm ready to go. And it just makes you wonder like what his motivation is. Well, he winds up telling Artie that it has nothing to do with living or surviving or any of that. It's just that he can't lose. He can't lose or be taken for a fool. But I can't help but love his character. Like, I love Glokta. As much horrible things as he does, and some of the most graphic scenes we get in this book are around Glokta and the whole torturing and things that he does. He's either doing it because those are his orders, right? And he's unfortunately for some, he's good at what he does, and he's doing it off of orders. He's doing his job, or he's doing something hard, right? His friendship with West being rekindled, and him trying to do what's best for keep his promise of looking out for Artie, and him trying to do his best with her and like keeping her alive. Him letting Eider go in book 2, right? Off of what? Compassion, empathy, I don't know. But there's this bit of him that you see that is good or has a heart through all the horrible things that he does. And it's just, maybe it's an excuse that I give myself to allow me to really like him as a character. And that's why I say Jezal's arguably my favorite, because it's hard for Glokta not to be my favorite. I feel like overall Glokta's like my favorite in the entire series. I love Glokta's character, and I feel like his is the most funny too. The sarcasm, just everything about Glokta. His relentlessness and his brilliance. I really like that. And so he winds up taking Pike or Ruse to see that he has Archlector Solt like hung up and hidden away in his torture chambers, because everyone thinks he's dead or whatever. No one's looking for Archlector Solt, and Solt was a horrible dude anyway, let's be honest. But at that point he's like, because Solt's like, why, like, ask your questions, and Glokta's like, I have no questions, like, this is gonna be for pure amusement, and so he tells Ruse, like, go ahead and open up that the kit, please. Like, let's get started, on torturing him. So it's crazy. Hopefully we'll see more of Glokta in the future books. I hope he's a character that Abercrombie doesn't move away from. I have no idea what's to come. I don't really look for spoilers or anything. I like going in blind. I like going into stuff blind. Maybe I'll read the synopsis, or maybe I'll hear stuff. Like, if I watch other people talk about books, one of my favorite things to do is, after reading books, is going and watching the spoiler discussions on the same book that I just read, right? And through that, I did hear, I think we'll get some Logen in the future books. And I think we'll actually see Casca again, or some more on Styria. Oh, or there's a preview. There's a preview at the end of this one that basically shows you, I think you're in Styria. I'm excited. I'm excited for the future books to come, for sure. And I hope we get more of Glokta. I'll be very sad if we don't. And another thing is that he sent Eider to Styria to be his eyes to spy on Teresa's father. Because that's a powerful dude, right? And he even winds up showing up to help in the war big time. So, and the way he was described, in his fancy armor and all this and that. So yeah, interested in that, to see how that gets wrapped up. There's a lot of loose ends still with how this book ended, but we'll move into Collem West, aka Furious, Lord Marshal West. Probably the most tragic of the character arcs, in my opinion. Great commander, great Lord Marshal. He's the reason why book 2 is my favorite, because of that guy. Him becoming Furious, him taking out Prince Ladisla the way he did, his character transformation, and just everything he had to survive through and go through, and the grit he had to show. And book 2, and him to become Lord Marshal. Him and Jezal's path is kind of interesting, right? They both kind of started where they started, and they both become who they are in book 3. But I love book 2 because of Collem West. Him wanting to keep his word to the Northmen, very respectable. I loved how he commanded Polder to charge in with his cavalry, regardless of how risky it was, when they finally did make it to the wall, after he did finally become appointed Lord Marshal. His play on the two as well, to get them to listen to him, to get them to respect him and do what he says. Brilliant. Love West. Him holding Logan's shield for him during the fight with Logen and Fenris the Feared. Him cheating for Logen to help him against Fenris as well. Just really shows his character and how he cares for the Northmen, his relationship with the Northmen and with Logen, the respect that he has for them and the respect that he's gained from them. I love that he even acknowledges Logen as king after Logen becomes king. He kind of feels weird about it, but I just think it's cool. It's so cool to see. A quote here of him and Jalenhorn conversing with each other. He says, "Some terrible crimes go unpunished, and a few, for no reason beyond the fickle moments of chance, are richly rewarded." So, one of my favorite quotes. I don't think he actually said that, but it was, one of Abercrombie's quotes. There's so many quotable lines in this book. It really speaks to his journey on becoming Lord Marshal West, right? He kills the prince, and he winds up being rewarded for it, is how he feels. So it's crazy. And the saying of people rarely getting what they deserve is ever present throughout the book as well. Even when Glokta told Artie, I don't deserve this. I don't deserve a wife as good as you right now. You doing this for me. You accepting me as how I am, shitting myself and a cripple and being in the position I'm in, and you having to do this. You shouldn't have to do this. I don't deserve this. And Artie's like, people don't get what they deserve. He winds up going back to Audua. He has the whole, scene with his sister. General Polder died, and you saw Croy, kind of take a blow there emotionally, even though they hated each other. It was maybe a brotherly rivalry between the two. Jezal visiting the sick, right, and seeing West and them seeing each other again, and him telling him, I'm looking forward to having you on my side in the closed council. I'm really going to need it. And it's sad that Jezal won't get that, because West got sick from the aftermath of the Seed and everything that Bayaz did for them to win that war. And it just sucks that it happened to West. It's sad that it happened at all, but it was heartbreaking to see him visit Glokta, and Glokta's like, I should have saw you sooner. I should have visited. He said, I should have came to you. And then you get to see his inner thought say, I should have came to you sooner. It was very sad. It was heartbreaking, because I love West. I love his character, his whole arc, everything about him. And he freaking, people don't get what they deserve. So Ferro Maljinn, the only difference between war and murder is the number of the dead. So that's probably one of my favorite quotes that surround Ferro. And not really a huge transformation of her, other than her relationship with Logen. It kind of softened her up a bit. She started asking people why she shouldn't kill them. Why should I let you live? And it was I kind of thought she was going to start letting multiple people live up until, she's fighting for the Union, and she has that Gurkish commander on the ground, and he's just scared. He was trying to get away, and she's like, "Why? Tell me one reason why I should not kill you." And he's like, I have family, I have children, I have I'll never come back, I promise. And boop, she kills him. She let Servard live when she asked that same question. She related to Servard, though. I think she did relate to Servard. She kind of related to the Gurkish commander, but it didn't matter in that aspect. So, but as far as what I mean about her transformation, she's still out for vengeance, she's still out for revenge. It's kind of been that way since the beginning, and it didn't change. She's hard to trust people, but she sticks around Bayaz. She runs up, so Kwai telling her not to trust Bayaz. And we knew Malika's Kwai, something was going on with Kwai. I love seeing Ferro being an excellent fighter. The stuff that she did for the Union was really cool, and they were fighting out on the little farmlands. I liked how she did wind up beating up Servard, right, and interrogating Glokta. Not that I, like the act, but I liked that scene. I liked the interaction between her and Glokta. And Glokta's like, I know she's not going to kill me. She's drowning me. She's dunking my head in the water. I know she's not going to kill me. It shows his experience. But even in his mind, he's like, I'm ready to go if that's what happens. But she's like, why are you following me? Why are you watching me? Why do you have a guy on me? It just shows her cunning as well. So she finds the seed. She winds up, we'll fast forward all the way to where she's holding the seed and hearing all these demons trying to come through it and whatnot. And honestly, I was kind of, in a way, I felt disappointed when she was able to resist these demon voices saying, let us come through, open the gates, because it looked like she was going to. She was about to. She was like, finally, I'll have the power for my revenge. I'm going to let these demons through. And I thought, okay, this is a twist, right? We didn't know this was going to happen, right? And but no, she resisted it, and she was like, resisting it will be my revenge, silencing the liars. So I was like, oh. It was taking me up to this peak of whoa, what's about to happen, to back down to oh, okay. But it's all right, whatever. Bayaz is over here using the seed, and he's like, it works. And he's causing havoc and whatnot while she's holding it. She does wind up being changed by the seed, though, because Logen goes to visit her later on to see her, and she's just ignoring what he's saying. Well, not really ignoring him. She's telling, if anything, he's ignoring her. But she's telling him to shut up, because she hears voices still. And she's hearing these demons talk to her still. On top of that, she has a strength that is found in her. I think she jumps from a very high place and lands on the ground effortlessly. So she definitely gets some kind of strength or abilities from holding the seed. And she winds up making her way to still exact her revenge. So a loose end, another loose end. Are we gonna see Ferro in the future books? I gotta assume we will. So interesting. On to Dogman and the Boys. The reuniting of the boys and Logen was definitely great to see. I was anticipating it for a long time. It really shows the Bloody Nine's reputation amongst the Northmen. You just hear them like, oh, it's the Bloody Nine, it's the Bloody Nine. So I'm just like, you know, because we didn't get any of that really up until that. Like, other Northmen are seeing him now and they're recognizing him. So it's really cool. Crummock and the Hillmen showing up, it kind of felt like they came out of nowhere, to be honest. I don't know how I felt about that at first. I mean, of course I accepted it and I enjoyed it because it did add to the world building still. You know, there's Hillmen. It was like, oh, the Hillmen. And, but it was just like, oh, okay. But, so basically he winds up coming up with a plan. He's like, we can draw out Bethid. I'll take you to our great fort, the great fort of the Hillmen that we have up in the north on the mountains and blah 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 blah. So they go there and it's like a shitty wall with like holes in it. It's not even like there's like gaps and stuff. Like it's not what he described it to be. And he's like, you know, y'all called me Madman Crummock. Like I'm known for being mad. Like why would y'all believe me? And it's just crazy. And they're just like, wow. So there's a tall tower behind this crappy wall as well. So at least there's a tower. So, but they wind up making the best of it. You know, they dig a hole, they build up the fence, they build up the gate strong, they fortify it. And they come up with a plan and how they're going to hold down this game of tower defense if their plan works. And it does work. Bethid does show up. All his men shows up anyway. They're holding down that fort like crazy. But it does come at great cost. So they desperately hold out for 7 days, I believe. It was looking pretty gloomy for them. Like I really didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, especially when I read the line that said, seemed like it was fast reaching that time. Time for each man to choose where he'd die. I was like, ooh. I loved how Abercrombie wrote the slapping of the rain during this scene, during this time, right? Because on the 4th day, it was raining so hard that, you know, you got the gate of their little fort being broken into, like on the verge of being broken into by big guys. And Logan is trying to scream down, like, y'all need to look to the gates, like archers on the gates, but they can't even hear him because of the rain. Like, it's raining so hard and so thick. I felt like I was there. It was so grim. Speaking of Logen Ninefingers, the King of the North, men. So to begin with a quote here. To touch the Bloody Nine was to touch death, and death has no favorites, and makes no exceptions. But good work is the best of blessings. The Bloody Nine opened his mouth and shrieked out all his bottomless love and his endless hate in one long wail. The ground rushed underneath him, and the heaving, writhing, beautiful battle reached out and took him in his soft embrace, and he was home. Rest in peace, Tolderu Thunderhead. I knew he was going to die the moment he ran down the stairs. I knew he was going to die. I didn't know it was going to be by the hand of Logen Ninefingers. You know, may he rest in peace. Also, one of Crummock's son died, and at the end of kind of their time there in the north, Crummock tells Logen, like, you know, I'm not going to forget that. You might want to stay away from where the Hillmen live, like, from now on, right? And it really shows, like, how detrimental that is, how the Bloody Nine just kind of kills whoever, and why Shivers hates him and things like that. And then the scene of Logan seeing all the dead people standing behind him and looking at him with frowns and not happy, it was just, man. Yeah, so we get hints of this in book 2 for sure. It was that moment that it was confirmed that Logan and the Bloody Nine are 2 different people completely. In the same body, it's just one of them happens to be a complete psychopath. So Bethid was not amongst the dead after they had victory in this battle, right? Holding down that fort after the Union showed up and wiped everyone there. Bethid's like holed up in his fort or whatever, heavily fortified, well defended, with the other Northmen, or the remaining Northmen, I guess. But they wiped out pretty much the majority of his army. The Union just got the news, you know, Lord Marshal West just got the news that Aju has been invaded and like we need you back immediately, like to help defend. Logan's like, you know, give me 1 or 2 days. You know, I have a plan, give me 1 or 2 days. And then he's like, okay. So he challenges Bethid's champion, Fenris the Feared. This is the fight I have anticipated since book 1, and it's finally here. But even more interesting than that fight was the conversation between Bethid and Logan. Bethid's telling Logan, like, why do you think I'm king? Like, why do you think I did all this? Like, the whole reason why we're here is because of you. Like, you kept going, you kept killing people, You kept challenging people. Like, what was I to do? Like, but like, I couldn't stop you, you know, because we know that Logen Ninefingers was Bethid's champion at one point in time, and we know who the Bloody Nine is now. So it's like, oh wow, it's a whole different perspective on Logen Ninefingers and this whole situation that they're in this war with the North and Bethid, and it's just you almost kind of feel bad. You almost kind of feel bad for Bethid in a way. I don't know. But either way, you know, you have to be realistic about these things, and we get the fight of Fenris the Feared versus the Bloody Nine, and that's all we wanted to see. so they fight each other. I love how, you know, I mentioned it earlier that West holds his shield for him. He winds up actually cheating for him as well. But the real victory here is where Dogman, Black Dow, and Grim go and kill the witch, the northern witch that is with Bethid, who's really helping Fenris the Feared. Because if they didn't take her out, then Logen probably would have died. The Bloody Nine would have died. And we learned that Fenris is like this ancient being, like this giant, massive giant, who I guess used to serve gods or something. And there's like a line that's like, you know, now I kill little men for other little men. Like, I don't remember exactly what it said, but it was cool. And but yeah, so needless to say, Logen definitely needed help in that fight. It was a fun fight. And Logen winds up killing Bethid, you know, after all this. He even winds up killing one of the Northmen on accident, right? Or not by accident, but, you know, it's the Bloody Nine who's surrounding them in this, who created the arena for this fight, the circle. But Logen winds up climbing up onto the parapet or the wall or whatever, and he kills Bethid. And then Krymek starts screaming out, you know, the Bloody Nine, King of the Northmen. Logen Ninefingers, King of the Northmen. And so they're all chanting it, and they all crown him as king now. And immediately I'm like, I don't know if you want this guy as king. You know what I'm saying? I don't think we want this kind of dude as a king, bro. That's scary. But, you know, it was like good for Logen. I do like Logen. It's tough. This definitely made me feel different for sure. But I still like Logen. I still recognize that they're two different people, and I feel it made me feel really bad for him, because it's like he wants to be a good guy, and Logen is a good guy. He's a great leader. We saw that in book 2. We saw his kindness and his respect he shows to people, and you know, him saving Malachus Kwai in book 1, or at least I guess he thought he did, right? He's a good man. I guess he just has that illness in him, or that other personality in him that is not a good man. Probably not even a man at all. So he winds up helping the Union, right? He takes his Northmen towards the south to help the Union retake Audua, and the North are questioning him. The other men are questioning him. I think Red Hat was the main guy who was speaking up about it. Like, why this ain't even our fight? Like, this ain't even our fight. Like, why are we here? More death? Like, where's the peace, you know? Logen winds up ruling with fear. He winds up kind of showing intimidation through his leadership tactics, versus like in book 2, when he was leading the fellowship and showing those leadership qualities, it was kind of more compassionate. So I kind of like saw that, but it was more like, well, challenge me then, you know? But I think also he's aware of the cultural differences too, like the North handled things differently. So he winds up getting them to charge in with him. They all go in, they help the Union retake the city, they fight a brutal fight, you know? There's a scene where the Bloody Nine comes out and almost kills Dogman, which is crazy. When we got to that scene, I was like, no, like, please, no. You know, I would have been so upset. And I don't know if I would have been able to forgive Logen on that one. You know, I don't know, man. But what an interesting dynamic for a character. You know, he runs into Jezal after the war, and he asks, do you think I'm a good man? You know, you've known me. Do you think I'm a good man? And Jezal's like, you? You're the best man I know. And oh my gosh, like my heart, dude. I was like, oh man. It was just crazy. Anyways, he goes to revisit Ferro, and it kind of annoyed me in this scene because he he's just ignoring everything that Ferro is telling him. He's like, he's trying to spill his heart out to her. And like try to say, I regret leaving things the way I did. I miss you kind of thing, right? Just like show his love. But Ferro's like hearing voices, like she's hearing demon voices. She's like, shut up. Like, do you hear that? Do you hear this? She's like bending down ear to the wall. Like, do you not hear that? And Logan's just completely ignoring what she's saying. It just keeps going on. And he's like, you know what? I'll come back later. It's just like, okay. Like, let's just forget that. Maybe that's just how strong he was feeling. But it's like, are you not a bit curious of what she's talking about? Like, well, okay. So we'll go into Logan leaving Dow to deal with Bethid's sons, right? His sons. I think I accidentally said Bethid's brothers now that I think about it earlier, but no, it was... So Bethid has 2 sons, and they're still in the north, causing mischief or whatever, right? Well, he left Dow to go deal with them. When Logan returns to the north, after leaving Dogman in Ottawa, because they need a good spokesperson, a good negotiator, to be allied with the Union. He's like, it may be good for us to have allies, we may need each other in the future, you never know. It's good to be friends with these people. So he leaves Dogman there. Logan returns, and to find Dow sitting on the throne or the chair there. And he's like, we've been talking. And Logan's like, we've been talking, okay. So they look to betray Logan. They look to kill him. And it's a fight between Logan, Dow, and the sons. And again, you think back on the conversation with Logan and Bethid, and it's like, that, it makes sense. And Dow's like, I'm tired of following you into endless killing type of thing, and you never know, like, you almost killed Dogman, didn't you? Like, you almost killed Dogman. He's like, you killed Toldaru, did you not? So all this is coming to light for them, but it winds up ending on, the same way it started in book 1. It began with Logan, with a chapter called The End, and it ended with Logan in this 3rd book with a chapter called The Beginning. In the same way, him falling down into a river. So it's poetic in that sense, but also another loose end. So we'll see where that goes in the future. So let's talk a bit about Bayaz now. Bayaz and the Magi. And one of my... he quoted, I forget the name, but a quote that says, does the devil know he's a devil? And so the way that everything wraps up, Bayaz is definitely painted as a villain here. We learn that everything is orchestrated by Bayaz, which we already knew the plot followed Bayaz. The whole thing with the seed, and we knew Bayaz was getting these people together for a reason. We knew he had the plan. We knew he knew things. But I didn't know to what extent, right? The whole thing about him finding the seed, it was always about him keeping the Gurkish at bay. Khalul being the real villain here, and Bayaz trying to, we thought we had more time, but no, we need to act now because they have a fleet. They're going to move on Ottawa, but it almost turns into something about him being just obsessed with power. It really showed his arrogance, the whole war and everything, and his attitude about it afterwards, his desire to win, just kind of being, it kind of relates to Glokta, like, I just cannot lose. Like, it almost feels like that, but on such a bigger scale, because Bayaz is playing a much bigger game, right? He's lived for so long, he knows way more than anyone else around him, or at least, like, the non-Magi. So all this being set up so he can win, no matter what the cost is, and his cold attitude about it all afterwards, towards the devastating aftermath, Ottawa being left in ruins, thousands are dead, and probably more sick from what Bayaz did with the seed, including our beloved Marshal West. So yeah, just definitely villain vibes. The way he left Yolway behind in the House of the Maker, that was like crashing down on the inside, and Malika's Kwai revealing himself or herself to be Tolmay, which is Bayaz's ex-girlfriend, going crazy, wanting her revenge on what happened with her, and how she was pretending to be quiet this whole time, but they escape. Bayaz and Ferro escape, and that's where the seed was the entire time. Ferro finds the seed in the House of the Maker, like, accidentally somehow. But they find it, they escape with it, and they left Yolway behind. And I hated that, because I love Yolway. Yolway was really cool. Probably one of the... Out of the Magi, he's probably my favorite. You know, I can't even say Bayaz is a favorite. I always had weird vibes about him. I always said that he might wind up being someone that they'd have to stop in the end. I felt like that was going to happen. But there's a lot of thought that goes into that right there. So, you know, he has his final conversation with Ferro, and Ferro's like, you know, you lied, you da-da-da-da, whatever. And, you know, Bayaz is like, you might be a useful tool for me in the future, and blah, 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 you know. He has his last conversation with Logen, and Logan's letting him have it too. Like, no, we're done. Like, we're done. You used me. You used all of us. You lied. We were just pawns to you, you know, and they did not feel good about it. So Logen was done with him as well. And, you know, Bayaz is all congratulating him on becoming King of the Northmen. He's like, did you not, like, you know... Oh, because he learned that Bayaz bargained for his life. That's what it is. Because he used to work alongside Bethid as well. Bayaz used to kind of guide Bethid for a little bit. And I guess that's why Bethid let Logen live, is because of Bayaz. And so Logen hated that. But because it was all just to serve his purpose. And so his conversation with Glokta was interesting as well. Him telling Glokta, like, you're going to be my man in charge. You're going to be my right-hand man here, my main contact here in Adua. And I want you to tell Jezal what to do, essentially, and keep him on a leash. And so it's just so ironic, too, just watching Glokta's whole character arc and where he came from and to where he's at now as well. And I understand his reasoning. He's telling Glokta, you'll be able to make the decisions that Jezal cannot make. Sometimes a king has to make decisions that aren't kind, or that aren't, you know, just seem morally bad, but they're necessary, right? And so he's like, Glokta, you'll be able to do that. And then his conversation with Jezal is by far the most interesting out of all of these, because he really puts him in his place. You know, Jezal's telling him, like, I'm not going to let a crippled command me, and I'm done listening to you as well. You know, I appreciate you getting me in this position, but with all due respect, I am the king, and you may leave. Like, yeah. So Bayaz puts him in his place, using his magic. Just really lets him know, like, you're a bug to me. And he tried to explain to him, right, before it got to that point, he tried to tell him, like, listen, Jezal, I've lived for hundreds of years. I sometimes forget how quickly you guys, you mere mortals, die. You guys live and die. Speck of dust, you know? He's like, I remain. And I've seen so many things. And I've seen how things work. And sacrifice is necessary to get victory and all this and that, right? But he does it in like a gloating way as well, the way he says it. Such arrogance around him, right? The aura around him is ever more like worse than it was even before. He does that to Jezal. I felt so bad for Jezal. And Jezal's like, yeah, okay, like he agrees, right, obviously. So I'll just ask the question, right, like is Bayaz evil? And is he an actual villain? It's very tough, because when I think about this question, I can't help but ask the question of, well, like, what if, like, okay, so what if he didn't do what he did? Then what would happen, right? Khalul. Is there another way that they could have defeated Khalul and the 100 words, the 100 eaters that eat man flesh? And even Bayaz keeps an eater under his control, which is Yoru Sulfur, right? Is an eater. He's the one who killed the second prince. I was shocked to find all this out and kind of let down a little in a way, because I guess I wanted there to be like some other kind of conspiracy stuff going on. I wanted there to be some other mystery that was going on. I didn't realize, like, oh, all of it is Bayaz. All of it. Every single thing. He's the banks, he's all of it. He's completely in control of Adua. The union is his, the government. He has ultimate power and ultimate riches. And you know, you hear the words, look to the banks, like it. I'm not going to talk about like the Federal Reserve and stuff, but that's crazy, you know what I mean? But like, you just thinking on, is he evil? I don't want to say he's straight up evil. It's hard to say any of these people are evil. It's like they're doing the best they can. You know, of course he has his agenda. Did he purposefully wipe out people for his own gain? I don't think that, obviously that wasn't his goal. His goal ultimately was to remain in control, to stop Khalul from taking over and keep things the way they were. Could they have won without his help? I don't think so. I don't think so. And if they could, but it's like if we're gonna say Bayaz Evil and condemn him as the ultimate villain, then what is Khalil, right? And it's almost like, okay, well then both of them are evil. I think all the Magi honestly should go. If all the Magi should go. I mean, if you think about it, the magic in this world is not even like, it comes from the other side, which is AKA hell. So it's like the magic is demonic already. So it's like, well, then they're all like all the Magi should go. I don't know. I find it very interesting to ponder about. And this was the controversy. This was the conflict, the thought-provoking things that pop up towards the end in this book, and it's so juicy. I do love it. I do like it a lot. The feelings that it gave me. So yeah, I mean, how do you feel about that? Please comment below. Do you think Bayaz is evil? What was your take on everything? I would love to see. And who would you rather have in charge? Would you rather have Bayaz in charge or Khalil in charge? Because that's what it seemed like it was going to be, one or the other. So what's your answer to that one? Going into my final thoughts, I love this trilogy so much. Obviously, my favorites in order are book 2 first, then book 3, then book 1. Why? Because Collem West, the chapter called Furious alone, just really, the way that chapter made me feel, I just feel like it popped so much. That and other events, Glokta holding down Dagolska the way he did. The whole journey of Jezal being humbled on that journey, right? And just everything in that book, I feel like just makes it my favorite. But for sure, the chapter Furious. That one more than anything. Such a great one. Book 2. The whole trilogy, though. I loved it all. This one is really good, too. I mean, there's too many moments to name. It was really hard to try to find a favorite scene because there's so many great ones. They're all great. I can't believe these books are said to be Abercrombie's weakest out of all the books in the world of the First Law. It's just so shocking, but hype level maxed out, isn't it? The hype level. I'm so hyped for the books to come. Just knowing that's what people think about this compared to the others. So I'll probably take a break, at least a year off from this world. There's so many other books that I need to read. But I cannot wait to return. I'm so glad that this was my first fantasy trilogy. So happy and honored to have been given the privilege to read it and be in the position to be able to read it. And I'm just grateful for Joe Abercrombie and this piece of art that he gave us. Book 3 was definitely the darkest out of all of them, for sure, at least for me, when it comes to the grimdark genre. I would definitely love a movie adaptation of these, or movie adaptations of these books. A show or series would be great too. I think it would make for good, a really good adaptation. I feel like they could do it right. I don't know if it would be as funny though. I don't know. I feel like the scenes that are like dark would be just dark. I don't know, and the humor may make it even more dark. But I don't know. I think if done right, it'd be really good. So hopefully that happens in the future. I don't know, or I live to see that. I don't really, there's certain things I don't watch, like most horror. I stay away from things that are too gory, your Eli Roth type of stuff. But I definitely don't shy away from like dark themes or grimdark, as you can see. I do wonder how much of that is due to like desensitization over the years, or how we grow up, like what we grow up watching. I don't know. I find that interesting. Breaking Bad is like one of my favorite shows. It is my favorite show of all time. I've seen it so many times, and to be honest, it took a few watch throughs of that show for me to realize how much of a piece of shit Walter really is. Like, he's such a horrible dude. And I knew he was bad. But there's just like this psychology thing going on where you're following the POV of someone. I feel like in certain moments you're gonna root for them. You may not root for them all the way through, but there's gonna be moments where you root for them and you want them to succeed, and it's like, well, this dude's a criminal. I don't know. It's interesting. Character transformation. I love it. Yeah, so this trilogy will always hold a special place in my heart, with it being my first trilogy. I don't know if I can't wait to see what will top it. I don't know what will. I have high hopes for the Song of Ice and Fire. I have high hopes for the Stormlight Archive. Can't wait to get into Mistborn. I'll be getting into Mistborn this year for sure. So I don't think it'll be the same vibes for sure. I already know that, so I know not to expect the same vibes. But just as an overall fantasy favorite. So that wraps up my spoiler discussion video on the First Law trilogy, Last Argument of Kings by Joe Abercrombie. Hope you enjoyed it. I know this video is long. I apologize. Please let me know in the comments below what your first fantasy trilogy was and where it stands as a favorite for you and amongst others that you've read. I would love to know that. And thanks for watching. Thanks for sitting through this. Hope you enjoyed it. And as always, I wish you the best and have a great rest of your day. Hello again. I'm Joshua. Josue. Alright. My name is Joshua Shigglewiggle. Hello, my name is Joshua Shigglewiggle. Bro, I didn't mean to say Shigglewiggle that time. Hold on. I said that serious as fuck. Alright.